Welcome to Beyond Names. I'm Dr. Habib. This is a space for spiritual seekers and soulful misfits, for the curious and the committed, for those grounded in a tradition, and for those who aren't sure what they believe. Whether you call the divine God, Yahweh, Allah, Elohim, Hashem, Great Spirit, Brahman, higher power, or you're still searching for language that fits, you are welcome here. Together, we'll explore the intersection of spirituality and daily life, the wisdom of many traditions, and the ways we return to our true selves, to our source, to the light that each of us carry within. I'm so glad you're here. Let's begin with introduction of our conversation partner for this episode, Dr. Colleen Quinn. Colleen Quinn is a psychologist, a mystic breathwork practitioner, and author. In her private practice spanning decades, Colleen uses somatic experiencing, internal family systems therapy, and breathwork to find and heal our body's stored traumas. In 2018, Colleen had her second near-death experience, which was the catalyst for her spiritual awakening. Her profoundly intimate and raw transformation is chronicled in her book, Essence Merging. To learn more about Colleen and her work, please visit essencemerging.com or her YouTube channel, Essence Merging Colleen Quinn, PhD. Dr. Colleen, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Dr. Habib, I want to thank you for listing all of those beautiful names of God. And isn't it just so lovely that love answers to every single one of those names?
Mhm. Yeah,
We
yeah,
can have a personal relationship through any path up the mountain. It's just lovely.
yeah, yes. That's why I am particularly a fan of the mystical paths and the mystical traditions, or excuse me, the mystical paths of the respective traditions, because of the commonality and the centrality of both love and unity, the idea of the oneness. And I really feel that whether you're looking at Christian mysticism or Jewish mysticism or Islamic mysticism and so on, that we're talking about the core sameness of love and peace and mercy and on. So to begin our episode and to begin introduction of yourself, just to give our listeners a sense of who you are, would you please share, obviously to the extent that you're comfortable, your spiritual story?
I would love to. Ever since I was a very young child, I knew that I was of God. My mother was bipolar, and we had quite a chaotic household. I was with my grandparents till I was 9, but then I was with my mother and her new husband, and it was quite chaotic. But I would leave every Sunday to walk myself across a 4-lane highway to sit in the church because I could feel the spirit, I could feel the love, I could feel the peace. And that's what I had been born into with my grandparents. I had a great foundation. And
Mhm.
it's interesting, Habib, because at a young age, I realized that there is a direct connection between the ability for my heart to be love and have these kind of cosmic intuitions. So I was 12 when I stood on my front porch and I said to my grandmother, who was like a mother to me, I said, "You're going on this vacation and you're going to die. I'm never going to see you again." I said this in front of my whole family. Of course,
Mhm.
they said, and she wasn't sick. They
Mhm.
said, "Oh, you're being dramatic." Well, that's exactly what happened. She went up there and died. So
Wow.
I knew that there was a lot more to life than the material. There's this energy bond, and love is the vessel that connects it, that brings it to life. However, I was young and immature, and I had a very patriarchal view of God for many years. For many years,
Mhm.
my prayers were a one-way diatribe of my requests of how things should go, and not a lot of listening. And I love that love never stops knocking on our hearts, ever. Like I call them love squeezes. The squeezes get more and more intense because
Mm,
love is trying to find that crack to find the way to come back in.
yeah.
And so, yeah, my first near-death experience, I was in the tunnel with the light, and
Mm,
the light, if there's a piece that, words cannot describe. Like you are subsumed in the light. You are the light, you're part of it. It's radical. But the light conveyed to me, we would like you to go back, but it's your choice.
mm,
And Habib, that was really powerful for me because like the human side of me was like, I could just beam right up. But when love is asking you, you're like, of course I want to go love's way. And
yeah.
so when I came back, even though lots of injuries, I was in intensive care for 2 weeks and the
Mm,
recovery took 9 months, but I was empowered and I needed that because for many years I hadn't fully been in life with both feet because of the traumas that I had dealt with.
mm,
So that was very powerful. And just fast forwarding years later, when I was learning to be a breath worker,
mhm,
the breath work trainer said, and she didn't know my history. She said, "Wow, Colleen, you really must have surrounded yourself with a death energy to magnetize that event to you." And that sounds controversial, and I know it may feel controversial to a lot of your listeners, but it resonated with me because
mm,
I could see how everything, even the darkest moments, are of love for our greatest becoming. And
mm,
it was what I needed to fully come in and choose life and live into my power. Now, still, I have a patriarchal view of God.
yeah.
So years later, I can't remember, I was probably 18, 20 years after that, I
Yeah.
got a pneumonia that it was a common form of pneumonia. You should recover in 3 weeks. 10 months later, I'm bleeding from my lungs, struggling to find breath. And the irony of that is not lost on me because that was the catalyst for me to find breath work.
Mm,
So when the doctor called and said, "We've tested you for every autoimmune disease and you have none of them, you will get well."
mhm,
Even though I was very, very sick, I did know I would get well. But I took stock in my life. Sure, I'd helped lots of people, but who had I really formed connections with? Who
yeah.
would come to my funeral? Where was the love that I created? Where was my love legacy? And I saw that I felt woefully short. And I fell on the ground, prostrate, sobbing.
Yeah.
Just let me be love in every moment. Because I
Mm,
realized that love really is the only legacy worth creating. And I was living on gifted time. So when I believe what I've seen in my own life and people I've worked with,
mhm,
when you utter a prayer at the very end of your strength, when you have no will left and you're totally surrendered,
mhm,
those are the prayers that are always immediately answered. And within 2 weeks, I was on the other side of the world at this embodiment retreat. It was a radical change to my marriage contract. I had never taken a vacation without my husband. And I'm like, "Hey, I heard there's this embodiment retreat and I'm supposed to meet the shaman. I think I should go." He's like, "Yes, go," it was radical. So I bring my friend and we go and I learned breath work. And that really is a means. There are more than one means, but that is a very reliable means to open
Mhm.
up your soul and go in and start that conversation where you're doing the listening. And honestly, our souls are all fully formed, unique manifestations of the one. So it's a conversation with God. And so everything has become a conversation with God since then.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. What a beautiful sentence to end on your spiritual story that everything has become a conversation with God. And I can't help but hear the many similarities between what you're saying and your way of interpreting your spirituality and expressing your spirituality and my own path, even though obviously it is quite a different story, and yet those similarities are something um, that I find especially meaningful and inspiring. And I love the idea that everything is a conversation with God. And that's one of the things that I am constantly encouraging my own students is to approach God with awareness of all that's happening with you, with awareness of what's going on in your mind and what's going on in your emotions and what's going on in your body and what's going on in your energetic heart, your energetic body, like to take all of you to be in conversation with the divine with that intention of the intimacy of the beloved with the beloved.
Mhm.
And that to me is what the spiritual path is. So I love hearing how similar what you're saying and how you're describing your own journey, how that sounds quite the same. Um, some things that I want to return to. I love and really appreciate how you talked about the darkest moments being the moments that are um, love squeezes, I believe you said. Love
Right.
squeezes that like the it's it's not necessarily comfortable.
No, no, no. You know what's interesting, Habib, is we all enter this domain coming through the birth canal. Those love squeezes are the beginning of our becoming. Nobody gets through this life unscathed. And I'm a big believer in the energy of our words and our thoughts. So we can call it pain, we could call it distress, we could call it challenge, and we could call it love squeezes. That all of those are going to bring a different energy to the experience. And the truth is, the potential for growth only ever happens from an uncomfortable place. We don't change what's working. So when we can change our relationship with those experiences, pain becomes our greatest teacher. It is a welcomed friend that is our greatest teacher.
Hmm. I, as someone who has dealt with chronic pain since I was a teenager,
Mm.
I love that perspective because even if you've been walking with an issue for years for decades as part of your spiritual journey, there are still times where like we don't ever lose our humanity. We're still human. So we still experience the human emotions. So I think it's true that no matter how much work you've done, you still have the emotional experience that is associated with discomfort, that is associated with distress, and is associated with pain. So I love that reframing of this is a love squeeze. This is, and I have a teacher in Islam. I don't know how familiar you are with Islam, but the Quran, every chapter save one of the Quran begins with the phrase, "In the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate," or it's sometimes translated as the most merciful, the bestower of mercy, the giver of mercy. And the word for mercy and the word for Lord share the same roots as the word for womb.
Mm.
So the image of God in Islam is the image of this all-pervasive love and mercy that contains all of creation.
Mhm.
So all of the severity, all of the majesty, all of what we experience, whether it's gentleness and beauty or whether it's harshness, whether it's light or whether dark, it's all encompassed in this loving mercy. So again, hearing the commonality, it's a choice. Like, do we listen for the commonality or do we listen to what's different? And I'm choosing to carry forward the love squeeze as the language that I think will help all of us. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. I want to build off of what you said too, Habib, because too often, well, just from a psychological perspective, many of us are very chaotic in our thinking or very
Mhm.
rigid in our thinking.
Yeah.
Those are both polar opposites of what is in the middle, which is a flexible mindset. And in spirituality, we call it non-dual truth. And you talked about some of these non-dual truths, the darkness and the light, but the whole encompasses all of them. And so these seemingly opposites are both true at the same time. We are fully human and we are fully divine. There is the darkness needs the light to reflect off of, and the light needs the darkness to show its effulgence. So we could go on and on, but the more that we can encompass the wholeness of the picture, and the real importance for this lesson is how do we practically balance fully feeling our feelings, because if we don't feel them at all, it's spiritual bypassing and you're pushing them into your subconscious. They're going to come out sideways. So, how do you balance fully feeling them and then choosing consciously to keep a high frequency? And I think that trips people up. Um, my practical advice for people is you have to feel your feelings, but you don't have to do it in the room with everybody else. They don't all have to feel your feelings, only you have to feel them. And
Right.
so that's when you want to go in and do an inward journey to allow these wounded children to come up and tell you what they're afraid or sad about. They have wisdom for you and for you to befriend and love them. Love is the only healer. So you have to go into these parts that were rejected so long ago and love them. You need to give them their due. There have been times when I've been in my meditation room banging my fist on the couch, and I stay until that energy moves and I
Mm.
can be in full remembrance of myself as love. And then when I walk out that door, I can choose to be in the higher frequency.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mentioned before we started recording that I'm very interested in spiritual practice. Like I definitely have a focus professionally and in my education and in my teaching, a focus on spiritual practice. So, uh, do you have any particular spiritual practices that are what you find helpful to taking your emotional you you mentioned the experience in the but taking what you're experiencing physically and emotionally and mentally and honoring it in a way that brings you to, I believe you used the term a higher energy or a higher vibration. Um, do you have a go-to practice that you use for that?
I do. So I believe there are very similar benefits to meditation, breath work, and even psychedelics. They all physiologically do a very similar thing in our brains. They shut down our what we call our default mode network. That's a construct that's on functional MRIs that maps directly onto Freud's construct of the ego. We now know it exists in the brain. It's
Mhm.
in our high brain and our front brain, and it's all self-referential. It looks for the shortcuts. It gets us sleepwalking through life. That quiets down with all three of those methods. But they're different in that meditation is like the radical practice of presence. So if you're in the mind, the diatribe of the ego running through your head, that'll be the longest 5 minutes of your life. It's not where I recommend that people start.
Right.
Psychedelics is great, but if you don't have a guide and you're not familiar with the art of surrender, it could be traumatic because it's going to thrust you into your soul like no holds barred. But breath work, I believe, is the middle path. Breath
Mm.
work shuts down that ego, and as you get deeper in your breath, it's a slow circular breathing. So
Mhm.
it's starting out calming your nervous system, getting you into parasympathetic. It's a delta brainwave pattern, which is very restorative. But as you get deeper in, your energy body starts to loosen from your physical body. Your
Mhm.
brain goes into gamma where it's completely lit up. And that's where you get the same visuals, auditory downloads, sensory experiences that you would with psychedelics. But the difference is with breath work, your soul goes at your ego's pace of readiness. So it's not going to give
Mhm.
you a descent trip until you're ready. Usually, for a long time, there are ascent trips where you're just one with the energy and it's like mind blowing bliss. Physiologically, what's happening, the Hindus call it Kundalini. I don't know if you've heard that term.
Sure.
Yeah, well, physiologically, what that is there's crystals in your cerebral spinal fluid, and they shoot up to the ventricles on either side of your pineal gland. In massaging the pineal gland, DMT gets released. That's laid dormant in our pineal glands. That's the very same chemical that makes certain mushrooms magic. It's what makes
Mm.
psychedelics psychedelic. It's in
Mhm.
our bodies. Well, when that DMT is released, it's coming into our cells, increasing our interstitial fluid so that we can amplify at a higher frequency. So there's a crystal clear example of how a physical practice is actually altering our energy field. We can amplify at a higher level. And
Mhm.
it's amazing because we're feeling bliss. And what I think is really happening when we
Mhm.
feel bliss, we call it love, but what it really is union. When our energy body comes loose from our physical form, it magnetizes back to the whole. We all, I believe, have a cellular remembrance of ourselves before the Big Bang, when we were all connected
Mhm.
as one unique manifestations of the whole. And it's all of our hearts are really looking for the union.
Mhm.
That's what this, we call it love, but it's really union, it's harmony. And your cellular body becomes more coherent, more harmonic as you do this. What's fascinating about it is when you're on a descent trip, because I know that's where you originally asked, you're hovering over your body and you're looking down at the thing that was too overwhelming at the time. But
Mhm.
you're looking down through the eyes of love. So you're in the place of the witness, but you are fully feeling what seemed so overwhelming. So that monster that was so scary, you can walk up to and start to begin to touch. And what I see routinely happen is that the story we wrapped around the experience, that wasn't fair. I was a victim. God was wrong. Whatever that story was, the
Mhm.
coin gets flipped universally. I see it in myself, in other people.
Mhm.
And the story becomes, I wasn't alone. God was with me all the time. I felt it in that experience. And I needed that to become who I am today. So it becomes an unrefutable knowing because you
Mhm.
experienced it. There's a Hebrew saying that says, what's truer than truth? Have you
Mm.
heard it?
Hmm. Yeah.
It's experience.
Yeah.
When you experience it and it's so real, so sensate, it's unrefutable. So that's why I love breath work because it allows our souls to go into those dark places that we pushed away into our subconscious that were coming out sideways, and we get to see them and know them and finally love them. And that's how they become integrated. You don't ever fully let go of that energy, but it changes. It's like changing our software system. Our nervous system is the software system of our body. It's like a system upgrade. So it changes the way we relate to that energy and it becomes harmonic and it doesn't hurt us.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. It's it's funny that the that saying that you mentioned, that experience is what's truer than truth. And in Sufism, we would, instead of using the word experience, we would use the word tasting.
What's the word?
Tasting.
Oh,
The
I love it.
Right, right. So the emphasis on, you think you know, but you don't actually know until you have tasted. Uh,
Beautiful.
yeah. And and it's interesting that you said that you talked specifically about the union, because in our spiritual practices across traditions, I do believe that what we think of as spiritual ecstasy or as ecstatic experiences, or some individuals call them mystical experiences, that those are instances that we use the terms love, but we also use the terms unity, as as you said, union, harmony, and then I'll also add oneness. But there's that, it's a tasting and experience of the ego. I don't know if dissolving, but the ego not being present,
Right.
right? Right.
Absolutely.
And
There's
it,
you lose the sense of self.
yeah,
There's no you and there's no other. There's just
exactly.
the experience, that third thing. That is essence merging at its core. When there's no you, there's no other. It's just this co-creation. That's what we're yearning for. And we can
Right.
have it whether we're emptying our dishwasher, whether we're in breath work, whether we're walking in the woods, we can have it at any moment. But I will say that from my experience, the
Hmm.
gateway in is conscious breath.
Hmm.
Only when I'm in my conscious breath, and breath is the only function in our bodies that can be done involuntarily, unconsciously, or voluntarily. I don't think that's random, Habib.
Hmm.
I don't think it's random at all. When
Yeah.
we choose to breathe consciously, what you were talking about before, full on in your body, your heart, your mind, your soul, I call that immediacy.
Hmm.
That is the gateway to open up, to enliven all of those functions so that we're fully in immediacy in this eternal now.
Hmm.
And it's powerful. I It was revealed to me in a breathwork journey that when we breathe in voluntarily, we're getting that air to nourish our physical forms. When we breathe consciously, we're
Hmm.
breathing in that etheric energy along with the air. So we're nourishing our subtle bodies along with our physical forms. And
Hmm.
there's that awareness of that essence running through all life. And since you're a doctor of religions, I want to say that it's not random that Jesus breathed the Holy Spirit into his disciples. And the Hebrew word for kiss, neshika, means to breathe together.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting.
All of the ancient cultures knew it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I was just talking with a previous guest conversation partner for the show, who was talking about her imagining and renewing her relationship with Islam and Islamic spiritual practices, and her realization that embedded into the practices are breath work. But she didn't know it until she, in some degrees, had not necessarily stepped out of the religion, but had stepped specifically into studying breath work and specifically studying somatic experience. And then she was like, oh, well, when we're doing Quran recitation, we are doing breath work. And it's for me in my Sufi order, we do a lot of chanting. And there's a particular practice where we really stretch out the chant in terms of we elongate the syllables of the chant, and it's such a beautiful example of breath work and of bringing together mind, body, heart, soul. So given that breath work is central to your spiritual journey and your spiritual practice, is it too much to ask if you could give us a little sample of breath work in the moment? Is that
I would love to. So,
okay?
would you like to be the one that I guide? Can I guide
Sure.
you?
But but
Great.
but through me, you're guiding all of the listeners, right?
I'd love to.
Okay, great.
So, I invite you to close your eyes if you would feel more comfortable. This is going to be a breath that is in through the nose and out through the nose. And you're going to be moving energy as you do this breathing. So, with your first breath, I want you to imagine red blood life force of your red chakra. You're going to be breathing that right from the base of your spine through your belly, expanding your rib cages out, up, up, up through your throat, up until you can get that breath to your pineal gland. And then with no gap between the inhale and the exhale, you're just going to let it fall out. There's no push. When we push, we can get tetany in our hands. It can be quite uncomfortable. So we're just letting it fall out. And it's like we're standing in our spinal column as we do this. So when that breath gets to the bottom, no gap, again, breathing in from the base of the spine, up, 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 that red vapor, drawing it up to your pineal gland. No gaps and letting it fall out. Now, as you continue this practice, I'm going to say a few more things. This is called a chakra calibration breathing. We tend to dirty our kitchens every day when we're rushed or stressed, and when we're any moment we're not in our breath. And so these chakras they're mini brains in our spinal cord, and they need to be calibrated. And so, starting with red, which is our life force, our safety in this world. After we balance red, then we would move to orange. Orange is our passion. What makes us passionate, our aliveness, our devotion. And so we would breathe orange juice right into our groin area, up, up, up to that pineal gland, and then let it fall out. And after we've spent some time with orange, we would move to yellow, right where our umbilical cord is. And we would be pulling in the yellow of the sun. And we would be tapping into the frequencies of creation, tenacity, willpower. And we would be pulling that yellow from our umbilical cord up, 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 up to our pineal glands, and with no gaps, letting it fall out. After we've calibrated yellow, we would move to green, our heart center. We would bring in green emerald diamonds right into our heart center, pulling that up, up, up to our pineal gland and letting it fall out. All the while visualizing each chakra below it, balancing, orbiting in harmony. After we've spent some time in green, we would envision blue crystalline pools coming into our throat, Word energy is the most powerful energy to bring into form. What we think and what we say becomes our reality. Like God said, he spoke into creation that the world was born. So word energy is powerful energy. Breathing in that blue into our throat, up to our pineal glands, and letting it fall all the way out. Finally, we're going to go into our third eye, and we're going to see a light coming through the darkness of indigo directly into our pineal glands. That bringing that full breath up our spinal cord and letting it fall out. We're losing ourselves in the act. We're not counting, we're not in our heads, we're just totally in our breath and in our energy. And lastly, we're going to breathe from the top of our heads, the violet, into our crowns. This is our true nature. This is our godlike nature, our innocence, our precociousness, our awe, our wonder. And we're going to breathe those energies into our crowns. Full breaths, no gaps, and let it fall out. And then we could always do the eighth chakra, which is that cocoon that surrounds us all. It is that permeable energy that comes off of our body and merges with the essence of all of life. And we're going to breathe into that cocoon, filling it with light, and let it fall out. And when you're ready, you can acclimate, feel your feet on the floor, acclimate yourself to your surroundings, and open your eyes. How was that?
It was, of course, a little different than what I'm used to in terms of my own typical practices. And, years ago, I went through training to be a yoga teacher, a certified Hatha yoga teacher. Um, and I loved at the time, I had just begun studying Sufism at that time. And I loved reading the commonalities in the Bhagavad Gita and these concepts that I was finding in both Sufism and in the Bhagavad Gita, and going, oh, I would never have thought that these two paths that are so different would have so many commonalities. And in this practice that you just led, I was thinking, oh, well, in my tradition, we don't use the word chakras, but we do acknowledge the subtle energy centers. We don't necessarily talk about them as much per se, but there is awareness of them. And then I suppose depending on where you land in terms of, every tradition has a spectrum, with some people falling on a more conservative side and some people falling on a more mystical side, that spectrum of exoteric versus esoteric. And so, yeah, this working with the subtle energy centers is part of the system. And I just love the idea of opening to be sustained by, I will say, light or love or energy, um, in every way. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a delicious gift. And when you feel that bliss, I ask, like, why wouldn't we run back to start every day? I honestly, I have to start my day with breath work or meditation
Mm,
because
yeah.
each night when we sleep, I believe our energy bodies loosen from our physical forms and we're floating around liminal space. And I think it's an act of mercy,
Yeah.
honestly, because this is pretty rigorous here. But there's a moment, awakening, where I'm back in the physical form. It's like, thud, oh, okay, I'm here again, right? And
Yeah.
I need to clean the kitchen. I need to remember who I really am. And I mean, life is easier when I get in touch with my bliss. I can spill it
Right.
out everywhere. So why wouldn't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love also that it's cross tradition. Um, and I think of Father Gregory Boyle. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's the founder of Home Homeboy Industries.
Oh,
Um,
I have heard of them. Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, and one of he things talk what he talks about is like how do you maintain that connection to the sacred on every moment? You know, you're gonna forget. Part of being human is forgetting. So your only hope is to bring your breath to make your breath part of your practice. And I love that, it doesn't matter whether you're spiritual but not religious, or whether you're a practicing Christian or a practicing Muslim, or that you can bring that breath work and make breath work central to your spiritual practice. And in my tradition, we do. I hope you find this interesting that I'm sharing this,
I
but
love it.
um, in in my Sufi order, there's the phrase La ilaha illallah, which is Arabic for saying there is no God, little g, except God, except the one God, or there's no reality but the ultimate reality. Or, it's this idea of saying that all of the appearance of multiplicity serves the purpose of realizing the oneness, realization of the oneness. And
Absolutely.
so a breath practice is to say on the exhale, la ilaha, and it's the visualization is allowing everything that's other than the divine, that's other than the holy, the sacred, to leave.
Mhm.
And the inhale is illallah, which is only the divine, only the love, only the light. And
Mm.
so that's my favorite that's my favorite breath practice because as you said, whether you're doing dishes, or streaming your favorite show or about to go to sleep, it's just something that you can carry with you in every moment. Um,
And return to in any moment.
yes, and because we forget, because we are humans,
Mhm.
pick it
Mhm.
up and you remember, oh, I've forgotten, and come back to it. And you can do that across traditions. Like, a Christian could do it with the Aramaic term that Jesus used for God, like Allah, or depending on your pronunciation, Allah. Like there's so many different ways that it's adaptable, and I love that. And I want to acknowledge, I'm looking at the time, I want to acknowledge that part of your desire to be on the podcast was to talk about your book.
Mm. Yes.
So, my understanding is that you have a book that is about your own spiritual experience and your own spiritual awakening and your own spiritual journey. That in it you tell about that process that you mentioned earlier of your near-death experiences. Um, that you talk about what you might expect when one engages on such a journey and gives oneself over to it completely. So I invite you to tell us anything more that you'd like us to know about your book, and also to invite you to read an excerpt from it if you'd like.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Habib. Yeah, I think I'd like to say that the term essence merging came to me in breathwork, and it really is this concept that we can lose our sense of self and merge with the entire moment. And that's where all the wholeness and all the bliss and the awe and wonder is. So we
Mm,
should all meet there in every moment. And I do think that as the ego loosens its grip on our reality, the ego gets very scared. And so as we go through this spiritual journey, it can seem very disorienting or maddening at times. And so I'm hoping that this book would serve as a primer for people who are newer to this journey because it's quite radical. It's a
mm,
really radical from the life of the mind, which I remember well. And my story, is interwoven in this very unconventional love story of my breathwork partner. I've been married for 46 years to who I call the guru of love. My husband's pretty amazing. And I, imagine sitting across from someone sharing breath every other week for years, having these soul to soul connections. He knows me on a soul level better than anyone, and I know him. And it became apparent that he's my twin flame, which is a concept going back to the ancient Greece of postulated that we were all formed in pairs in union, in a moment of pure delight by God, and that we were separated and it's as part of our human journey, but more and more are coming to know the incarnation, because we're in this period of great awakening, and so we need higher energy in this realm. But to navigate that kind of love in the midst of a marriage is it's a different type of love, and to have that support of my husband, who when I was like, how am I going to mention this twin flame thing to my husband? I'm like, well, Spirit will give me the opening. And it came up,
Mhm.
oh, why are you interested in these twin flames? And, I felt that clench, but I proceeded with excitement. I'm like, oh, here's my opportunity. And when I told him the concept, he goes, oh, is it me? And I said, oh, that life were so easy. And I have a lot of friends, Habib, guys and women. And he goes, oh, it's Finn, isn't it? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, look, your heart is too big for just one. And I'm so glad that he can hold your heart in this deep emotional way that is sometimes hard for me. Well,
Mhm.
that's a pretty radical love, right?
Yeah.
And so to navigate how love begets love and how we do a disservice to any relationship if we put all of the demands for our growth and our becoming and our needs and desires on one person. That's a
Mhm.
disservice to any relationship and to ourselves, frankly. So it's really an exploration of how love does beget love. It only multiplies if we
Mhm.
let it.
Mhm.
So that's interwoven in the story.
Mhm. Yeah. So I appreciate your saying that there are different types of love, and that as we journey, that we realize that there are that part of the journey is having things in their appropriate place, right?
Mhm.
And acknowledging the appropriate place for things. And as you say, it's not realistic in some ways that to put everything in the same place, for lack of a better word. I'm not wording it very well, but yes, I know that specifically in a marriage, um, that there is something that's very holy and very sacred, um, and that doesn't mean that you can put all of your expectations and all of your different types of love in the same receptacle. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's not fair for one thing. Yeah.
For
So,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you want to read us a little excerpt from it?
Sure. Do we have time?
As you like.
I would love to.
Okay.
So this excerpt is when I was at the embodiment retreat, and it was towards the end of the retreat. And the only thing you need to know is that the day before, I had an experience where I felt really left out. I didn't
Hmm.
really realize what was fully going on. I realized later that I was booted back from a very cosmic trip, and I thought, well, I'm not going to get back to that unity again. But as our egos do, I said, oh no, I felt left out of this human group. Our
Hmm.
egos like to make up those stories to protect us of what they think we can't handle. So that's all you need to know. And
Okay.
the shaman's name is a Penaman. So a Penaman announced that we could stay in the pavilion and breathe, but he was going to walk down to the ocean. Anyone who wanted to join could, and most did. An unseasonable cold front with more heavy rain moved in. During my immediacy practice, I had lost all sense of time and never stopped to pick up warmer clothes. However, after my struggle with feelings of not belonging, I immediately hopped up. Crystals quickly formed in my hair, my teeth chattered, my body shook. As we walked, I realized I had not put my flip-flop on. Despite the gravel rocks digging into my bare foot, I would not be deterred from the group. My reactivity was commensurate with my willingness. Focusing on my breath, I found that I could overcome my body. The sting evaporated. We walked about a third of a mile to the beach, following a Pentaman like little chicks would their mother, until he stopped to gaze out at the vast night sky meeting the deep ocean. I began enjoying the tranquility of the rain forming a diamond curtain before my eyes. After a time, a Pentaman turned to silently walk back. I took about 5 steps to follow, but then felt an energy behind me. Turning, someone was still there, in the dark of the storm, deep in cosmic trance. Having just felt the prick of being left out, I returned. I saw that it was Ali. At that time, he carried a deep resistance to the word God or anything relating to a supreme being. This came from a mismatch with his religious family that he felt to be oppressive in their beliefs. Like most of us, his problems with his parents were transferred upon God and life in general. I could relate. Filled with compassion, I was drawn toward Ali. Frozen hair, one surgical boot, and one bare foot in this stormy beach. Ali was far off in another realm. I was amazed that he could get there standing up in the pelting rain. I put my hand on his back to support him and connect to where his spirit was. I just gazed out at the scene, not trying to change state. After a while, I felt the blood drain from my hand. My body's revolt was countered by a singular intention. Nothing was or ever would be more important than sharing all that this moment had for us. Once I set that objective that I could stand on that beach for the rest of my life if called to, the experience transformed. My hand felt supported. No longer was any effort required to keep my hand elevated. That experience taught me that intention is a catalyst energy. The very same action performed with two radically different intentions will produce radically different results. Ali's breath set the metronome, which lured me in. At first, my eyes saw a violet energy field about 50 feet high, emanating off the tops of the ring of trees. It vibrated as the trees moved. Oh no. Then suddenly the sky opened. Beyond our cloudy atmosphere, where no stars were visible, I saw another galaxy and even another beyond that. 3 galaxies stacked up on different axes, packed with stars. I saw the beams of light that each star radiates. Stars were talking to one another through their light vibrations. Mesmerized, I saw the great cloud which holds all of the water of life. I saw each human, animal, plant, rock, and creation as a drop of water. Each drop falls from the source, having unique yet intermingled experiences that make up the collective experience in this realm. The dance played out before me. It reminded me of the work of Snowflake Bentley. His photographic images of snowflakes showed that each drop of water's journey is unique. The snowflake becomes more intricate and artistic by the experiences of its journey. Wind, barometric pressure, velocity, temperature changes, solar radiation, humidity, all distresses. Painful experiences are what created the exquisite fullness as a unique masterpiece of art right before splat. It reached the ground of Mother Earth, only to be offered up again to the great cloud. Adversity alchemized to beauty, and so it goes with holy evolution. This is a true hero's journey. I saw that across time, each vibrational drop, which is our current life, carries with it all the karma of prior lives, along with our unfettered connection to the whole. I saw the historical evolution of our planet. Souls are becoming aware of their interconnectivity, becoming conscious of both ancestral karma and past life experiences. Just then, Ali began to come back to this realm. He looked at me with the eyes of a boy in wonderment. A bright light shone all around him. As one, we embraced. Nothing was said, yet everything was reverenced and honored. A guide, Evan, came looking for us. My glance let Evan know that all was more than fine. Ali and I walked arm in arm back to the cenote in silence. Once there, I saw everyone differently. It was as if the veil of delusion had dropped. I was in awe, literally. There was no separate self. It was trippy that this could have eluded me for so long. I saw everyone as me, as spirit. My consciousness hopped from speaker to speaker, fully embodying what was observed. Perspectives like here and there evaporated. I could flip back and forth, feeling the uniqueness, oneness, and vibrations in all experience. All was for our becoming. Everyone and everything became precious. My most complete, radical, awakened realization offered a perceptual shift downloaded directly into my being. I found I could never unknow the knowing. Though I have gotten reactionary and rejected the knowing for a bit, the way back has been easier because my experience is irrefutable. There are 1,000 reasons why I could have turned around on that beach. My intention that evening was purely for the sake of another. That's a holy love, and wow, was it blessed.
Mm. Thank you. I love the that your intention manifested in this realization that that you are no separate self. It might not be exactly how you worded it, but something quite close to that. Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And in my Sufi order, we often say that the that all pain comes from the illusion of separation.
Mm,
Yeah. So
yeah,
would the world be a different place if we were able to hold on to the truth of not being separate selves? If we were able to hold on to the truth of union
yeah.
in our hearts and souls. So,
Well, two ancient cultures and astrology all predict this time in our human history. It started at the winter solstice of 2019, which is right when COVID was coming into
mm,
China. And they
mhm,
predict it'll take 50 to 55 years. And at the end, that we're all connected will be common knowledge, if not that we're all one. And that feminine energy, not females, but feminine energy, good for the whole, the benevolent compassion for the whole, would
mhm.
lead. And I know that the patriarchy is not going to go down without a fight. We see those love squeezes now, but it's
Yeah.
lovely to think that there's a preview to the end of the story and that I didn't think I would be alive to see this love revolution. So I'm very grateful to be here.
Mm. Well, thank you for sharing that rather hopeful vision of a love revolution. And
Mm.
thank you for sharing a bit about your spiritual journey and your experience with spirituality. And thank you to all listeners for joining us on Beyond Names. Before we go, if you would just pause briefly, one breath, to reflect for a moment on what stays with you from this conversation. May something you heard today help you reconnect with the light in your own heart. May you grow in compassion, clarity, and courage. May you find your way again and again back home to yourself, back home to the divine, however you name it. If today's conversation spoke to you, please like, share, and comment on this episode. And please, follow and subscribe to Beyond Names. Again, for information on Colleen, essencemerging.com. To make an appointment with me, visit habibboerger.com. Until next time, may you be light. May you consciously participate in growing your light. And may you share your light. Peace be with you.
Beautiful.